For decades, systems theory offered a powerful way to understand complex phenomena, from cell biology to global economics. But it suffered from a persistent flaw. Its models never interlocked into a single architectural truth. Instead, science was left with fragmented metaphors. Theorists like Norbert Wiener, Ludwig von Bertalanffy, and Claude Shannon produced brilliant insights into cybernetics, open systems, and information theory. Yet their models remained trapped in isolated disciplinary silos. Biologists used one vocabulary, engineers used another. This era of isolated insights is ending. General systems theory is evolving from a set of descriptive analogies into a mathematically proven structural necessity of the physical universe. The 7ES framework, developed by the KOSMOS Institute, was designed to resolve this historical fragmentation. We are going to explore how one exact 7-element mathematical structure dictates the behavior of absolutely all operational systems in physical reality. Scientific unification requires an architecture that applies universally, without a single exception, across every domain of inquiry. The framework identifies 7 core elements: input, output, processing, controls, feedback, interface, and environment. This is the minimum required functional architecture to satisfy Ashby's law of requisite variety. Together, these 7 elements provide complete functional closure. The theoretical stakes are absolute. A system missing even one of these elements lacks the capacity to compute, function, or persist in the physical world. To test this claim, researchers conducted a massive empirical audit. 70 independent case studies rigorously stress-tested this exact framework. The test subject spanned subatomic quantum mechanics, abstract sociology, and even seemingly static physical objects. In every case, all 7 elements were clearly identifiable and operational. The audit identified 0 counterexamples across 11 distinct domains. The consistency of these results across 70 extreme tests suggests that the 7-element structure describes fundamental properties inherent to any operational system. To apply systems theory universally, the framework first corrects a legacy mistake, the tendency to conflate a system's boundary with its surroundings. The 7ES framework strictly defines the interface, specific touchpoints mediating all internal and external exchanges, like cell membrane receptors. This is distinguished from the environment, the broader external context and physical laws providing resources and perturbations to the system. By separating the interaction point from the context, researchers can mathematically model boundary permeability and exact exchange rates. This precise definition of boundaries reveals the framework's most critical property, its fractal, recursive nature. Every element within a 7ES system is itself a complete 7ES subsystem. The processing node of a cellular system contains its own inputs, interfaces, and controls at a lower level of organization. Because of this architecture, the outputs at one fractal level immediately function as the inputs for the level above it. This continuous fractal recursion mathematically solves the nested systems paradox that broke older non-recursive models. Infinite recursive depth is the physical mechanism finite systems use to generate enough variety to survive in highly complex environments. The framework also confronts a blind spot in legacy cybernetics, the assumption that systems without explicit sensors or control loops cannot be analyzed through systems theory. Traditional cybernetics relies on active feedback, explicit signaling loops used for correction, like a thermostat adjusting to a temperature sensor. But the 7ES model introduces passive feedback, which is required to understand fundamental physical systems where explicit signaling is absent. In static objects or stable fields, the mere persistence of structure is the feedback. It implicitly confirms that the internal processes remain within viable parameters. By recognizing both active loops and passive persistence, researchers can analyze atoms, rocks, and quantum fields with the exact same rigor as social algorithms. Feedback is a universal property of existence, transmitting information about a system's operational viability through its mere continuation. The proof of this architecture's scale invariance requires applying the exact same geometry across drastically different physical realities. At the quantum scale, the Higgs field operates as a complete system, processing energy inputs regulated by conservation controls to output particle mass. Tracking the architecture upward into human engineering, we find the same 7 elements governing the technological interfaces and processing circuits of particle detectors. In biological systems, the 7ES maps accurately describes cellular metabolism, where nutrient inputs are transformed into the energy outputs necessary for organism survival. The outputs and governing rules generated at the quantum and technological scales provide the inputs and environmental constraints for the biological scale. At the largest observable scale, we find the cosmic web. Here, gravitational constants act as controls, processing baryonic matter into galaxy clusters. The cosmic web relies entirely on passive feedback. The persistence of its filamentary structure confirms that gravitational dynamics continue to dominate over the force of cosmic expansion. The physical substrate changes from quarks to entire galaxies, but the 7-element mathematical geometry remains invariant. Theoretical elegance requires hard empirical validation. This is provided by the synthesis reports conducted by the KOSMOS Institute. This logarithmic scatterplot maps 70 independent case studies across 61 orders of magnitude in spatial scale. Within the zone of verifiable physical reality, the framework was successfully applied across 44 orders of magnitude, represented by these data notes. The combined audit found that even edge cases like static books, which maintain themselves through passive feedback, and chaotic social movements, which revealed organized internal subsystems, mapped to the 7 elements without exception. Analysis of belief systems like racism and religion showed that these abstract ideologies persist because all 7 elements, from cultural inputs to institutional controls, remain mutually reinforcing. The audit even verified passive feedback on the cosmic scale. The persistence of the cosmic microwave background radiation functions as the ultimate passive feedback signature, confirming the system state of the early universe. This 70-0 success rate demonstrates a level of empirical robustness previously unseen in systems theory. The framework's reliability across observable scales allows us to push the 7ES model to its absolute theoretical limits. At these extreme outer edges, the framework scales down to Planck-scale quantum gravity and expands outward to hypothetical multiverse environments. This degree of scale invariance indicates that organizational principles are just as fundamental to the universe as the laws of physics. The 7ES calculus establishes a unified field theory for complexity. Theoretical physicists, engineers, and academic theorists now have a verified universal architecture to apply to their most complex challenges. The universe operates through a recursive architectural logic that bridges every scientific discipline, from the smallest quantum field to the edges of the cosmic web.